Lego Batman, a hot topic at the moment because Legacy of the Dark Knight officially releases in 2 days. And while scouring the internet, I randomly happened upon this game, Lego Batman the mobile game. A technically undownloadable version of Lego Batman because it was created by GameLoft for J2ME phones, or in simpler terms, older phones like the Nokia flip phone back in 2011. But I was able to get access to it. So today, my goal is to beat the entire game, making my way through the story, defeating the main bosses, but most importantly, I just want to acknowledge how much the game has changed. Oh, and quickly, before we begin, about 89% of people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Okay, enough intros. Let's begin. Level 1 starts off with a message from Commissioner Gordon telling us that Mr. Freeze's thugs are all over the city attacking everyone, and this is actually a ploy to distract us so he can rob the bank. So with the Batmobile, we make it over to Gotham City where we instantly see his thugs harassing innocent people. And within the cutscene, Batman instantly starts throwing hands. But there's this one weird thug who pulled out this cape looking thing and then just disappeared into thin air. That's an important detail to mention because at this point, it kind of just didn't make any sense. By the way, it was now time for us to take over, so I started beating up the thugs, eventually making it to this area where there was a thug beating up a police officer up top, but I couldn't really hit him. But then the game started signaling us to use our batarang to take out the guy up there. So that was exactly what we did. Then proceeding to the right, where a couple more enemies came out of this random door, so we beat them up, picking up the studs that they dropped. And then there's this box with an arrow over it, which after breaking, we actually saw that this was the first thing that we could build. And this was just something that allowed us to grapple upwards where we could get to this red lever, and flipping this lever allowed us to open up the gate to the next area. And this was definitely the one cool thing about this game, because before playing it, I thought that it was just going to be a left and right side scroller. But when I saw that there was more depth to the game and you can move up and down, I realized that this game might actually be better than I originally thought it was going to be. Because when I saw that this game was on flip phones, I kind of lost a little hope because I thought that maybe it would be too straightforward. But you can tell that GameLoft really tried their best to make it as close as possible to the normal Lego Batman games, because the vibe of the game was decently similar even though it was on the flip phone. Of course, there were some big differences like the graphics of the game and how you can only play Batman. There isn't really a second character like Robin. Also, you're going to notice that this game doesn't have any different suits and it's just the basic Batman with his basic punch attacks and his batarang. There are a couple of different things that you can deal damage with in the game, and you'll see most of those later on, but the coolest one in my opinion was that you get to drive the Batmobile in a couple of the levels. Oh, and I also found it pretty cool that the setting of the game wasn't just on the floors of the city, and you were actually getting up top on buildings as well, using zip lines going from building to building at times. And then when you jumped off, Batman would pull out his cape and glide down. A lot of little things that made this game a pretty fun experience. One cool thing was right here where it destroyed a bunch of different things on the map, and then out of their parts I was able to build a turret. And then once I got on top of it, my goal was to try and stop the incoming enemies, which I'm not gonna lie was pretty easy to do because it one-shot all of them and they were pretty slow. And then after destroying all the enemies, we go into a little cutscene where Batman does the weirdest flip I've ever seen, but somehow makes it over that truck, which then we beat another thug to save a police officer. But more importantly, we went into a cutscene where we saw Mr. Freeze for the first time, and he had this ability where he could put up these ice walls with his gun, and they were definitely a nuisance because you couldn't attack with your batarang or your punches to break them. But this was especially a problem because we needed to able to break those two right in front of us to actually end the level off. So we had to build some things, getting above on the buildings, until eventually we made it over to these two boxes that dropped some parts off for us, allowing us to build that weird looking red box. And I'm gonna be completely honest, at first I had no idea what to do with that red box because you saw me punching it there and it did nothing. So I was kind of just trapped here for a little bit, trying to find the solution for the level. Again, trying to punch the ice blocks, that didn't work. You could actually lock on your batarang to the ice blocks and it looked like it'd do damage, but it did nothing. But thankfully, after a while, I realized that red box actually held explosives in it. And I was supposed to pick up the explosive from the box and drop it off in the circle, which actually had the ability to destroy the ice blocks. And entering above the circle, the first level had actually been beaten there. But of course, there was no time to waste as Mr. Freeze hadn't been caught yet. So I immediately went into the second level where we're first given a small backstory on Mr. Freeze, basically telling us that he was a cryogenicist named Dr. Victor Fries that was trying to cure his terminally ill wife Nora, but in an accident he got turned into Mr. Freeze and is only able to survive in a Sub-Zero suit, and that he still do anything to find Nora's cure even if it takes destroying Batman in the process. So the first cutscene of the level is now us seeing him trying to break into the bank, which he is very easily able to do, even taking down some police officers on his way. And of course, in the second level, our goal is to now take down Mr. Freeze. But just as we're about to make our way over to him, he blockades us off with some ice walls. So instead, we're forced to beat up more of his henchmen, who then dropped us the red box again, and using the explosive from the red box, we blew up the ice barricade, eventually making it past. And on my way to the right side, I saw that there was an elevator there, but at this point, it had been closed off. off. But thankfully, it wasn't like a puzzle or anything. We just had to beat up more enemies and the elevator opened up on its own. And if you look to the right, you're gonna see these mortar types of weapons that shoot different types of things at you. And the way to take these down is that first you have to use your batarang on them, and you'll see that it goes down, basically making it powerless in that position. And then when you see that it's powerless, you have to punch it, which in return destroys the machine. But explanations aside, we now made it into the elevator, which took us all the way up to the 4th floor from the first. And again, just as we're about to make our way over to Mr. Freeze, we transition into a cutscene where Mr. Freeze is again sliding away, causing chaos as he goes along, eventually entering into another door. And while I was in this area, fighting all the different enemies and solving the mini puzzles, I couldn't help but look at the chandelier over and over again. I don't know what it is, but something about it just seems off. But chandeliers aside, we built this grapple, and this allowed us to bypass the wall that was blocking us. And after dropping down, we had to take down some more enemies, building another explosives box, which we had to use to free this guy that was stuck in ice. But nothing really special happened from freeing him, and instead the next step was trying to enter these 2 doors where a bunch of enemies popped out of. But more importantly, there was a box inside that we broke, which allowed me to create a second lever, and pulling the lever down, another wall that was blocking us dissipated, and we'd finally made it to the door which Mr. Freeze had entered, and it turned out to be another elevator. And this elevator takes us from floor 4 to floor 1. And this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but there was this one enemy in the elevator that kind of just destroyed me in a 1v1, and he's not even supposed to be a special boss. And you might have already noticed there, but whenever I died, I lost 100 studs. And that's basically how dying in this game works. If you lose a life, you lose 100 studs. And I'm assuming if you don't have enough studs to come back to life, the game kind of just ends. But I'm not 100% sure on that, as I never got to that point. And looking back at the game, a whole bunch of enemies started storming me, breaking out of random areas, so I was kind of having to tactically reposition myself so I could be in a better punching area. And eventually, after enough enemies were beaten up, we got another cutscene where we saw these people running around, and Mr. Freeze makes another appearance, going out of his way to freeze the innocent people, again escaping behind a gate. So I thought that I was gonna have to chase him again, but thankfully after freeing these 2 guys from their ice and entering into the open gate, we see Mr. Freeze just standing there, and approaching him, the boss fight immediately started. And I'm not gonna lie, in this game we see Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, and the Joker, and out of all 3 boss fights, this guy is somehow the most annoying, and it's mainly due to one reason, which was his Ice Blaster attack where he froze you if it hit you. And for some reason, it's literally impossible to get out of this, because as soon as you get out, Mr. Freeze just freezes you again, and he continues to do this until you're dead. And thankfully you are given a second chance when you come back to life, because you're given more time to maneuver around, but I kept on getting frozen over and over again because his bullets just have an insane radius. So he kind of just bullied me here again where he froze me, and then when I got out, he froze me again. But eventually, after a couple of deaths, I learned to keep my distance and over exaggerate my dodging just to make sure that the bullets didn't hit me. And basically the way you do damage to him in this fight is maneuvering and dodging the bullets, and then when he's reloading, attacking him. And using this, I'd gotten him down to a half a heart, and then eventually one last hit took him down to 0 health, meaning we'd finally beaten the level. And you can just ignore that rating that I got at the bottom. Level 3 starts off giving us the brief that they've found Poison Ivy at the greenhouse, and that she's trying to create a eco weapon. So our goal is to shut it down, which we find her immediately, but just like Mr. Freeze, she runs off right away. And just like how Mr. Freeze had those ice walls, Poison Ivy has some plant walls. This time we had to build vines, which allowed us to climb up and over the plant wall. But as soon as we got down, a cutscene started where a bunch of minions broke through the glass up top and jumped us. But I was very easily able to take them all down. Afterwards, building a grapple that actually allowed us to get up to the broken glass that they had come down from. And up here, we saw Poison Ivy. But of course, as you've probably already guessed, she ran away. So we built a ladder, trying to chase after her, even using a zip line, taking down tons of more enemies. And if you remember, I mentioned in the Mr. Freeze levels that the mortars have different types of projectiles. And if you look here, you'll see that this mortar had a poison projectile since it was the Poison Ivy level. But the way to take them down is the exact same, and it's very simple. Oh yeah, then we got led into this area where we got jumped by 5 enemies, who we very quickly destroyed. But then right after, we got approached by 9 more enemies. And things were looking a little suspicious here because Batman was getting nervous, and this fight seemed a little impossible. And quickly after, we realized that this was just part of the level and we were supposed to fall through the glass. So we didn't actually have to fight all the enemies at once. But now looking to the right, you'll see that there is a wall of plants again, and we have to get through that somehow, which after destroying these 3 objects, we were able to build another explosives box. And I'm not gonna lie, as I was taking the first explosive over, I kind of failed and ended up killing myself, and nearly did the same thing with the second one as well because I didn't know where to take it, so I kind of just dropped it and ran away. But thankfully on the 3rd try, I realized that I was supposed to explode the 3 machines that were powering the plants. In the process, destroying myself, but thankfully the wall had also been taken down. And lastly, climbing over another wall of vines, we once again ran into Poison Ivy, but this time she had an enormous Venus flytrap waiting for us, and we needed to find out a way to take it down. And like most difficult things in this game, the answer to them is explosives. So we grabbed it out of the box, planting it next to the Venus flytrap, taking it out, which also gave us a ladder to build. And climbing up the ladder and escaping through this glass, the level had been finished. And though not too many new things happened in this level, the next level was pretty cool because first we were briefed that Poison Ivy was escaping, but then we're also told that the Joker is tailing the Batmobile, which at first I had no idea what this meant, but going into the level, we see Poison Ivy escape and the Batmobile chasing behind her like when we first started the game, but this time we actually get to drive the Batmobile ourselves. And the controls for the Batmobile were pretty simple, basically just swiping up and down, but then also if there was an obstacle in the way, you could shoot bullets from the right side. So that's exactly what we did when we saw boxes placed right in front of us. And for a little while, it was just maneuvering and shooting, but then out of nowhere, a cutscene started where we see Joker in a truck first crash into a car and then start chasing after us. And this actually started a boss fight named the Truck Boss. And you might have noticed here that instead of the normal gun that we had on the Batmobile, our weapon now changed into mines. And our goal here was basically just dropping down the mines, which dealt half a heart of damage to the Truck Boss every single time. And then when the Joker tried to attack us, we would have to just dodge his attack, eventually getting him down to half health, which kind of forced him to go in front of us. But he didn't know that this was actually better for us because our front gun kind of just blitzed his health down, and we very quickly defeated this boss. But this wouldn't be the last we see of him because he actually got away here. But with that, the level had also been completed. Level 5 starts off with a message from Commissioner Gordon telling us that Joker and his thugs have taken over Gotham Amusement Park and he needs us to get there and stop them. And as we start the level, there's a cutscene where we see them running around in the amusement park, just causing havoc to random things. But you might remember at the very beginning of the game, I mentioned that one thug that kind of just suddenly disappeared, and Joker does the same exact thing right here using that weird looking cape, which made me kind of assume that that random guy at the beginning happened to be Joker. But the game itself never confirms or denies this, and the capes are kind of the only hint we have. And either way, we made our way through the amusement park, beating up all of Joker's minions, even getting tricked by this red box, which I thought was an explosive box, but it ended up being one of Joker's toys. But thankfully, it's very easily beatable and you just have to punch it once. Also, after making our way through the gate, a cutscene started where we see Joker kind of just dancing and running around. So we build some more things of our own, making our way upwards where another cutscene starts where we see Joker dancing again, but at the end of his dancing, he kind of just transforms into one of his minions. So we beat up these minions, eventually making our way over to this elevator, which if you turn this lever downwards, goes all the way up, but we actually need to get on that elevator, so I did have to call it all the way back down. Afterwards, standing on the elevator myself and using my batarang to turn the lever, which allows us to get all the way up. Afterwards, jumping and gliding down with Batman's cape and landing over the other side of the fence that was blocking us. And here was where we saw Joker again, where he created an ice cream machine out of thin air. And this ice cream machine is important because after getting an ice cream from it, a weird box appears, which after breaking, we can build a grapple, getting up to the top, destroying a flower, which gives us the parts to build a lever. And this lever opens up this one entryway into another flower. And breaking this flower makes more enemies appear, but it also drops the parts for an explosive box. So taking the explosive from the explosive box, we place it in the circle next to the stand, finally being able to make it through this area. But then there's this whole other obstacle where we had to first grapple up and then throw our batarang at this rainbow balloon, which moved the balloon over to the right, and hitting it another time popped it, bringing up a statue from the ground. And this statue was probably the glitchiest thing I found in the game because even though we're supposed to be able to get over it, I couldn't for a little while and kind of just kept getting stuck on it. But after a minute of trying and getting a running start, Batman eventually jumped over. And using this last grapple, I was able to grapple up to the top of the building, where Batman looked a little mind boggled because we saw Mr. Freeze again. But it turns out Mr. Freeze was actually just the Joker. And for some reason, this mortar that he left behind did an insane amount of damage because it took out 2 full hearts and destroyed me instantly. But destroying the mortar itself was again very easy. So I descended down the zipline that Mr. Freeze slash Joker had come from, where we finally see Poison Ivy again. But it's not Poison Ivy and it's Joker. I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea what was going on in this level. I didn't even know Joker had all these abilities. But either way, I proceeded through, eventually making to this area in a cutscene where we see Poison Ivy and Joker in the same place. And as we tried to chase after the Joker, apparently Poison Ivy had laid a trap for us, so we got caught in it, which like normal allowed both of them to escape. But entering that big hole, this was also the end of level 5. And level 6 starts off with a brief backstory on Poison Ivy, telling us that she's a botanist named Pamela Isley and that she turned into Poison Ivy after a series of experiments to infuse toxins into her bloodstream. And a backstory in this game usually means a boss fight, so I knew that we were finally fighting Poison Ivy. And similarly to that previous level that was in a greenhouse, there was just a whole bunch of plants that we had to constantly destroy, and there wasn't really much else to the level until we finally made it to this cutscene where we saw Poison Ivy watering her plants, and then right after, her boss health appeared. But I quickly ran over to the flowers, taking them out because arrows were pointing at them, and the arrows were pointing there for the purpose of telling us that the plants had explosives in them. And it's pretty obvious that the explosives were here to take out the Venus flytrap plants, so I planted one of them, which did take out the left Venus flytrap trap, but then a second one was able to take out the right one, which brought Poison Ivy to us, who at first did a pretty decent amount of damage to us, but then I kind of just started throwing hands, completely depleting her health, getting her down to 3 hearts from the full 8. And afterwards, we saw that same little process of building the explosive box, destroying the Venus flytrap, and throwing hands with Poison Ivy up until eventually her health had gone to 0. And with that, level 6 and Poison Ivy had finally been defeated, meaning we had 2 more levels and 1 Joker to defeat, which level 7 was about to be another Batmobile level because Gotham City traffic cams had caught Joker driving around the streets. So we got in the Batmobile running over some minions, and then in the same manner as that previous level, destroying boxes and collecting our coins while driving. There was also this cool little area where we had to drive to the other side of the road because the street had been damaged in front of us. And after this was when we saw Truck Boss slash Joker in a truck again. And it was basically just the same exact thing where we planted our mines and just did damage to him constantly. And after dealing enough damage, he went in front of us and were able to just blitz his health down using our normal gun, which puts us into the last cutscene of this level where we see Joker escaping again. But at the same time, level 7 had been beaten. And level 8, the final level, starts off with a debrief of Joker's backstory, basically telling us that his full origins are unclear, but it is known that in a failed heist, he fell into a vat of chemicals that bleached his skin, turned his hair green, and locked his lips into a bright red smile. The level starts off with a cutscene where we see Joker get semi-detained by the police, but then suddenly he disappears up above, dropping a grenade in his path, destroying all the police officers, which was a pretty crazy intro. But either way, I quickly made it above buildings, going up against enemies that were dropping in with balloons, eventually making it into this area, which was a puzzle, but it was a very basic one, and you kind of had to follow the path of the jack-in-the-boxes in which they came out. So after pulling the levers in the correct order, the gate to our right opened, allowing us to make it to the other side. And afterwards, we ran into this little area where we had to destroy all these obstacles, and they gave us the parts to build another cannon. And similarly to that first level, we had to use this cannon to fend off Joker's minions, which again was extremely easy because they kind of just got one shot. And then we got to this area, which was a little annoying because as the game demonstrated to us, the idea of taking out the minions here was that we had to use the cannon's shots, and just normal attacking would take them down, but it wouldn't fully kill them. So we had to build a cannon, and then we sort of had to bait the cannon to shoot its shot onto the minion, which would then destroy the minion itself. We then also had to enter the second room, which showed us Joker, 2 of his minions, and then 2 innocent people hanging from balloons. And what we had to do here, similarly to the cannon one, was dropping the people on the balloons on top of the minions, which finally took out the minions, opening up the gate, and then allowing us to enter the third and final room. And this was basically the same thing as the first room, but just had the ice cannon instead of the poison one. And eventually we were able to freeze all of the minions, opening up the gate, leading us to the final stage of this entire game. And if you look at the blocks underneath where Joker was standing, you'll see that they're different colors. And this was basically a mini Tetris game where we had to use our explosives to line up the colors of the blocks. And when they lined up 3 in a row, that section would disappear. And so after using a couple more explosives, getting out the second layer, and then eventually the final third layer, it was finally time to fight the Joker. And I'm gonna be completely honest, the Joker fight was pretty easy. It was basically like an easier version of their Mr. Freeze fight because he would shoot his gun at you, but he wouldn't freeze you when he hit you. There was, of course, the 3 cannons constantly being annoying, but they weren't that difficult to dodge either. And eventually approaching Joker, we got him down to half a heart, but I'm not gonna lie, he did this cool little teleporting trick where he appeared right behind me and shot me, destroying me. But right after respawning, I was able to punch him once, taking him down. And that was the end of the level and the end of the game. Again, don't mind the score I got at the bottom. But anyways, if you made it this far, let me know what you thought about the game. I thought it was pretty cool for being on a flip phone because before going into it, I thought it was gonna be a lot worse. But I did actually end up enjoying it. But okay, enough yapping from me. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.